Have you ever woken up from a dream that felt more real than reality itself? A dream so vivid, so unsettling that it leaves a permanent mark on your soul. Tonight's story is about a woman named Elara and a dream that didn't just haunt her sleep, but followed her into the waking world, changing her forever. Elara was the kind of person who seemed to move through life on a gentle breeze. She was calm, quiet, her voice a soft and comforting melody that could soothe any storm. She was a haven of peace in a chaotic world. But one night, that peace was shattered. She dreamed. But this wasn't a normal dream of familiar places or strange scenarios. This was ... nothing. She found herself floating in an abyss of absolute darkness. There was no ground beneath her, no sky above, just an infinite black void. A strange, low hum vibrated through the emptiness, and a faint light seemed to emanate from her own body, casting no shadows. In this silent expanse, she felt a presence. It was an intelligence ancient and vast, and it was observing her. It wasn't looking at her. It was looking asterisk through asterisk, her sifting through her thoughts, her memories, her very essence, like a scientist studying a peculiar specimen. She tried to cry out, to ask what was happening, but she had no voice. The ability to speak was stolen from her, trapped somewhere deep inside the dream's logic. Then a voice emerged, not through her ears, but directly inside her mind. It was a whisper. That wasn't a whisper, a sound without sound. It spoke in a language she had never heard, a symphony of clicks, tones, and vibrations, yet somehow she understood every single word. The voice asked a single, relentless question, over and over. Do you remember where you were before this? With each repetition, a crushing pressure filled her skull. It felt as if thoughts, memories, and data that were not her own were being forced into her mind, pushed in with an unyielding, methodical force. The pressure built and built until it was unbearable. Elara jolted awake, gasping for air, her lungs burning. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. The room was freezing, an unnatural chill that clung to the air and seeped into her bones, despite it being a warm summer night. She turned to wake her husband, David, her voice trembling as she tried to call his name. But the sound that came out was wrong, horribly wrong. It wasn't her voice, it was deeper layered, like two distinct voices speaking in perfect, chilling unison. One was her own, terrified and small. The other was something else, entirely cold, guttural, and ancient. The alien sound woke David instantly. He sat up, his eyes wide with a primal fear that recognized something was deeply amiss. He didn't even need to see her face. The sound alone told him that the woman beside him was not just his wife. Before she could process what was happening, the second voice, the intruder in her own throat, spoke from her mouth. "They are not finished." David stared at her, his face a mask of terror. "Elara, what's wrong with your voice?" "Who's not finished?" She tried to answer, to reassure him, but she couldn't. It felt like her body was no longer her own. She stood up, but the movement was strange, heavy. Gravity itself seemed to have intensified around her, pressing her down, making each motion a monumental effort. It was like learning to walk all over again in a body that felt alien. Her hand, guided by a new instinct, went to her neck. Her fingers traced the skin, and she felt it a subtle, raised pattern just beneath the surface. They felt like symbols, geometric and complex, as if they had been branded there from the inside. Drawn by a morbid curiosity, she stumbled to the full-length mirror in the corner of their bedroom. What she saw made her blood run cold. Her reflection, It lagged just a fraction of a second, but it was undeniable. When she moved her head, the Alara in the mirror moved a moment later, like a delayed video feed. She leaned closer, peering into her own eyes. Her pupils, normally small and dark, were now expanding at an unnatural rate. They grew and grew, swallowing the green of her irises, until her eyes were almost entirely black to shimmering, inky pools. She whispered her own name, a test, Elara. But what came out was not her name. It was a string of celestial coordinates, a location somewhere in the deep, uncharted cosmos. David, scrambling out of bed, reached for his phone on the nightstand. His hands shook as he fumbled to dial for help. "I'm calling someone, Ilada. An ambulance." In a blur of motion that defied the heavy, sluggish feeling she'd had moments before, she crossed the room. Her movement was unnaturally fast, fluid, and predatory. She grabbed his wrist, her grip impossibly strong. The second voice hissed from her lips, sharp and commanding. No signals. They trace signals. David froze, a trapped animal. The look in her eyes was not one of anger or madness, but of cold, detached logic. This wasn't his wife. For what felt like an eternity, but was likely hours, she sat perfectly still on the edge of the bed, unblinking. Her gaze was fixed on far beyond the walls of their room, and she whispered. A constant stream of numbers, equations, and star charts flowed from her lips in that chilling dual voice. She began to speak of the architects, beings of immense power who traveled the cosmos, not as conquerors, but as correctors. She spoke of humanity as a flawed design, an experiment with imperfections that needed to be adjusted. The voice explained that they were seeding changes, upgrading select individuals to prepare the species for a new stage of existence. As the first light of dawn broke through the window, painting the room in soft, gray light, her body suddenly convulsed. She collapsed onto the floor, taking a deep, shuddering breath, as if she'd been underwater for hours. David, her voice was back. Her real voice. It was small, fragile, and laced with pure, unadulterated terror. She looked around, confused, her eyes once again her own. What? What happened? I had the most awful dream. The visits to doctors and specialists that followed were fruitless. They ran every test imaginable. The changes they found on her brain scans were inexplicable, showing patterns of neural activity they had never seen before. She had significant gaps in her memory from that night, remembering only the dream and the sheer terror of waking up. The strange symbols under her skin had vanished without a trace. They told her it was a complex sleep disorder, a fugue state by stress. But Ilara and David knew it was something more. Life tried to return to normal, but a shadow now hung over their home. They were haunted by the memory of that voice, of those black eyes. And the story doesn't end there. The calm was only temporary. Every single night, at precisely 2:37 a.m., it happens again. Ilara rises from her bed, her movements once again heavy and deliberate. The double voice returns, and she begins her recital of numbers and cosmic truths. But now there's a difference. In her waking hours, one question from the original dream echoes in her mind, clearer than any other memory. Are you ready to be changed? She used to be terrified of it. Now, as she stands in the darkness of her room each night, a vessel for the architects, she finds herself answering in that layered alien voice. She speaks a single word into the silent room, as if replying to a question only she can hear. Yes, and from the deep, dark corners of the universe, something somewhere replies back. The corrections are underway. Thank you so much for joining me for this unsettling tale. What do you think the architects have in store for humanity? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story and want more content that explores the dark and unknown, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps us bring more of these narratives to you. Until next time, stay curious and maybe sleep with a light on.